and you have room on your screen, you're able to follow this on YouTube too. And there's a YouTube chat, which we respond to normally. And
or I could just switch and go live on YouTube with you.
No. Well, I mean, it depends on whether you want to talk, because if you leave your video going, you're going to be recorded on YouTube forever.
Right.
And if you talk, you're going to be recorded on YouTube forever.
Sure.
And so we are live on YouTube now. And so if you don't want to do that, then you might want to just follow on YouTube. But if you're interested in speaking up, which we would love for you to do, especially considering you're a psychotherapist, you can keep us out of trouble, because neither Jordan nor I am, neither of us are. And
it has its pluses and its liabilities. So
right.
I think not being one also has its gifts in this area for sure.
Well, that's certainly true for me. It's really enriched my life tremendously, as you'll see from some of these photos I'll show you. But good morning, everyone in YouTube, and welcome. We're going to do a couple things before we really get started. We have today the Jung Society of Washington put up an interesting meme. So I'm going to share that on the screen first and just read it to you, except somehow I seem to have gotten rid of it on my screen. Let me see if I can get it back. I had it there 5 minutes ago. There, that should help. There it is. Okay, so this is Happy Easter, everyone. So this is what Carl Jung says. The human psyche and the psychic background are boundlessly underestimated, as though God spoke to man exclusively through the radio, the newspapers, and through sermons. God has never spoken to man except in and through the psyche, and the psyche understands it, and we experience it as something psychic. And that was from a letter to Pastor DeMoore. It's in volume 1 of letters, page 98, August 15th, 1932. And so happy Easter, everyone. Happy Passover to our Jewish followers, and just make that available to people to chew on, because obviously we have to think about it. Now, what we have discovered, and I'll explain it to you, Judith, as if you're brand new and never heard of what we're doing. What we've discovered is a new way to develop culture. And it isn't a religion, and it isn't, it's not a rational method. Okay, it's exactly the opposite of a rational method. But this all came up originally in February of 2021, when I received a cancer diagnosis, a prostate cancer diagnosis. And that has since been treated and cured by radiation. But at the time when the doctor called me on the phone and said, "Yep, you got cancer," the first thing that came into my mind was that I have a dear friend named Tim Holmes, who is the first American artist to win a one-man show at the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, Russia, after the Soviet Union collapsed. He was the first American artist to win a one-man show there. And that was in 1993. And so he's been a lifelong very successful sculptor. And his pieces, he did 4 pieces for Bishop Desmond Tutu, for example. He did a couple for Jimmy and Rosalind Carter. He did the UN Peace Prize for Women. And he did China Peace, which was for the dissidents in China after Tiananmen Square. So he's done a lot of very prominent artistic pieces. And so the first thing that came in my mind when the doctor gave me his diagnosis was I want to have my portrait painted by Tim as a legacy to for my children. Okay, thinking, I might die here. And so on May the 7th, 2021, I flew to Helena, or the 6th, I flew to Helena, Montana. I spent 32 hours there with Tim, and the full day of the 7th of May. And Tim did 30 drawings of me during that period, during that day, and then delivered a portrait about 8 or 10 weeks later. And I was very touched by that. But when I was there, I was astounded by Tim's studio, which is a 7,000 square foot studio in Helena. And it used to be a home for wayward women. It was run by a Catholic order of nuns, but that had ended in 1925 or so. And then the building was just used for storage and stuff for about 60 years, 70 years maybe. And then Tim bought it in the early 1990s and has turned it into this really interesting studio with all of his art all around. And so I said to Tim, Tim, we have to do an event here. We have to bring people here so that they can see this. And so he agreed. And initially we thought we were doing just an art show, basically an art show with some art teaching, right? That's the mundane way we were looking at it at the time. But we recruited 4 other artists to work with us. One of them is Colleen Kibert, who's now a dear, dear friend of ours. And she has done ceramic sculpture her whole life, informed by Jung. She has a Master of Arts in Jungian Psychology from U.S.C. in Santa Cruz. She has a beautiful home on the Pacific Ocean in Aptos, California, where she's lived for 50 years. And I won't, for this purpose, go into why Colleen and I have a very close connection, but we do. And it partially was instigated by my activity on Jung, because everybody came to this process via my website, basically via my YouTube channel and my website. And so in the fall of 2016, I had this call from Colleen, and in 15 or 20 minutes, I was driving down the highway, and in 15, 20 minutes, we had an interesting bond going between us. It was a very unique bond, and I'm not going to talk about what transpired in that call, other than to say she was aware I was doing this website, and she came to me because of my interest in Jung. So a lot of water has gone under the dam since then, but I called Colleen and asked her if she'd be interested in participating in this event in Helena, Montana, where Tim lives. And she said, well, I would have been offended if you hadn't invited me. Mind you, she's 90 years old this year. And so we recruited 3 other artists, and and two of our 6 organizers at the time, they're now 7, but 2 of our 6, one is a man who has been practicing psychology in the trenches, clinical psychology for 45 years in Frederick, Maryland. And the other is John Jackson, who's a retired psychiatrist and has been Jungian informed for 40 or more years. He's not a Jungian, neither of them are Jungian analysts per se, but they have been informed by Jung. And so we, in November of 2021, we got together at Colleen's house in Aptos, California. I'm going to show you some pictures of it in a minute. But in that first meeting, we had an incredibly interesting bond that happened, notwithstanding anything specific that happened during the session, but we connected very deeply. And it wasn't until later that Tim and I started to realize that the confluence we were talking about, and we named our 2022 confluence the Creator's Art, a confluence of art, psychology, and renewal. Okay, that was the name of it. And you can find it at confluence22.org. Confluence22.org. That's where you can find what we were doing then. And we realized that there was something unconscious that was very powerful that was happening to us. And everyone really felt it. We performed Mary Stein and Henry Abramovich's play, The Analyst and the Rabbi, at our confluence. I played C.G. Jung. I had a mustache for about a year. And John Jackson, the psychiatrist, played Rabbi Leo Beck. And Sherry Loveler, who was a poet and a painter, who was one of our participants, played a woman, the spirit woman that participates in that play. I assume you may have watched the play at some point. And it is on my YouTube channel right on top. So if you want to see it, you can see it. It's only a 1-hour play. But anyway, at first, after our November 21 meeting, Sherry and John were not too sure about it. And finally, for a variety of reasons, I decided, well, we're not going to do this. But for another variety of reasons that relate to this conjunction of our psyches, by the end of November, we had decided to do it. And Sherry and John really got into it. And Tim was the director, and he's a longtime theater person, and one of the 4 members of the Montana Logging and Ballet Company, which used to be the main satirical group on NPR, for example. And that group has been together for 50 years, believe it or not. So Tim was the director, but in February, um, John and Sherry called me up and said, well, we want to do more rehearsal. We were rehearsing via Zoom every Sunday with Tim, but they wanted to rehearse on Tuesdays and Thursdays too. And don't tell Tim. So we agreed to that. And so over a couple of months, we were rehearsing like 3 times a week. And then we revealed to Tim that we had been rehearsing. And so it was a success. The play itself was a success. And what we found when we got together, we had about 37 people attend last year, plus a lot of locals came to the play. But in our actual confluence at Tim's studio, we had 37. And while we did the artistic teaching type of thing, what came out of it was, again, more bonding that's incredibly tight. And so this past week, the 6 of us who have been in it since the beginning, and our 7th participant, whose name is Judith Stone and is a retired Methodist pastor, happens to have gone to divinity school with Tim's brother, and happens to have lived near John, so knew John separately, John and Sherry separately, before we got all this together. So Judith joined our group about a year ago, and so we had another meeting in Aptos last week with Colleen at Colleen's house, and we planned for our confluence in October. But what we found from the 22 confluence was we made an incredible cultural bond among the people, that it is irrational. It's not based on anything that we specifically say to one another. But last Wednesday night, we had 6 of the organizers and 6 of the people that came to Helena were present. We had 12 people, so it was the perfect number. And it was, and everybody basically agrees that what is developing is a new form of culture, and it's loosely surrounded by art. So I'll quickly show a couple of photographs from last week so people get an appreciation for it. I think, let's see, where are they? Okay, I think this is it. Okay, are you seeing this now?
I see your gallery, your photo gallery.
Okay, all right, let me, I'm gonna start to scan through these things. That's nothing, but this is my friend in San Leandro, so that's different. Okay, but here we are in Aptos, and you can see Colleen is on the right here, and you can see her beautiful location, which overlooks the Pacific Ocean. And this was a sunset where we did Tai Chi together. And this is our motley group. And let's see. And this is one of the things that we did together. That's a group project. Let's see if I can turn it on its side, because it should be this way, I think. And
Excellent calligraphy throughout.
Right. And so here, and this is one of the activities that we're going to do with Sherry at Confluence. And so we were testing it ourselves to try to do it. And it was working out pretty well. So we think everybody can do this, what we're talking about here. And it really brings up the unconscious. And so you can see, all right, see those people there? Well, they're those little dots over the telephone pole there to give you an appreciation of Colleen's house. And here we are talking about the Confluence and the things we're going to do there. But then these are some quick looks at Colleen's place. Again, wait a minute. Okay, so Colleen's place is just play this 13-second video. This is her house, and this gray roof here is over her studio. And in the earthquake of 1989, the one that was in the World Series, right? Part of her house fell into the ravine, and so she got a big insurance payout, and she rebuilt it really strong. So these are steel I-beams supporting her porch, basically. But I'll just give you the panorama of the place here now, just to give you a sense of it. It was really an incredible 3 days together. Okay, so that's that. And let's go the other way. And this is the wall to her house. I think that's lilac there. And here's some of, okay, that's our planning, what we're doing. And this is an omelet. I made everybody omelets, so I took a picture of the omelet I was making. This is Colleen in, maybe 40 or 50 years ago. And you can see she's on the right here, and you can see she was quite a looker in the day.
Not much changed.
Yeah, she's quite a looker today too, no doubt. And so I'm just taking some pictures, showing some pictures of some of her ceramic work. It's really incredible. I think I'm going to end up with this piece, the blue piece here. This is looking out from her ceramic studio out onto the ocean and the deck. And there's just ceramic art everywhere here. Now, this is what we're going to do. This technique is called Rocky. And the way it works is you wet a piece of watercolor paper and then let it dry. You wet it and color it. And then as it dries, the watercolor makes shapes in it. And so then what you do is you outline these shapes with like a Pentel pen. And so this piece that Colleen did last year, it looks very Chinese, of course. It's called A Red Ribbon Runs Through It. And Colleen had to give it meaning and so on. So she saw the peaks as the steps of her individuation. And she saw this image as representing a corset. And the red ribbon here is the ribbon that holds the corset tight. And then women traditionally would unloose the red ribbon take off their corset, and I'll let your imagination go from there. But in any case, that's what Colleen saw in it. There's lots of things. I mean, I can see a face here, for example, and but there's lots of things that you can see. And this is a very nice piece. It's about 3 feet tall and 2.5 feet wide. And we're going to do at the confluence, it's a way of bringing up what you see unconsciously. Everybody is going to work on one, and we're going to make, it's going to be 30 feet long, and we're going to make a huge rocky piece as a part of our process. And then these are Bardo navigators. This is a Bardo navigator here. I don't know if you know what a Bardo is, but the Bardo is where you go when you die if you're a Buddhist. And so, I mean, just to give you a sense
49. 49 days and the
yeah, 49
passage.
days. Yeah, this is a different rocky piece here that she did.
You know what's interesting about the previous Rocky piece? I ironically, on today, a resurrection kind of thing day,
Yeah.
I saw the 3 wise men walking in an orange from the right and towards the center in the previous Rocky piece. When you had it zoomed out, you know, they kind of disappeared when you zoomed in. But it was interesting that I started to see this nativity scene panorama.
Jordan, we had another hiccup. So you said about the previous Rocky piece, and then we lost you after that.
Yeah, the previous Rocky piece, when you had it zoomed out, it melted and disappeared when you zoomed in. But when you went to the previous Rocky piece, it was like the 3 wise men in orange walking up, a whole nativity scene in a daytime landscape.
Yeah,
in the back.
Right.
Yeah,
I see that now. Yeah.
And with even Mary kneeling on the left, and then
Right.
this basket.
And three wise men, sure, bearing gifts.
There,
Yeah, you can
exactly.
definitely see that.
And it's interesting, the trees in the background are like big giant angel wings. I mean, so there's a whole, which is ironic on today, on Easter, because it's not the birthday, it's the redemption, the resurrection piece. But
yeah,
that was interesting there with that Rocky piece. When you had it right there, if you zoom in further, they all melt and disappear, become odd, non-facial shapes.
Right. Well, there's, you can interpret these pieces in many ways. I mean, this face here could be God overseeing the 3 wise men here. I mean, there's a face there, very definitely.
There's even a locked cave door below them, this kind of God arch piece. I mean, it's the whole story and birth through resurrection after and both, all at one time. So it's as if, what's interesting with the way that visually the story is told, time goes out of the equation and the whole story. Birth, naming, death, resurrection, all 4 come up.
Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a collective unconscious Rocky. Okay, so what you've just done, none of us saw that before until you've just pointed it out to me, but none of us saw the 3 wise men and Mary and the angels and the face of God type thing. But it's certainly there. There's no doubt. You've highlighted something that's very meaningful to many of us. And Susan Mason, who's an artist, says, I see Mary Magdalene and Jesus here. And so you can see many things in that there. And so the point is that what happens is lots of stuff comes out. So the point is that we're working with the collective unconscious, and we're in the confluence. Our intention is to show people how to bring things up from their unconscious so that they can study them and see them. And so for Colleen, who's been studying Jungian psychology for 50 years, this is her individuation. But as we can see from Jordan's reaction and my reaction, different people will see different things. And so what we're going to do is we're going to wet our paper, and everybody's going to paint on it for the background, and then we're going to let it dry overnight. And then the next day we're going to start drawing on it. And when we do that, we'll have up to 50 people adding their ideas to the thing, and we're going to have a 30-foot long collective mural. That's what we're going to do.
And what's beautiful about those too is, as I kind of let that idea, that expectation that I saw visually, intentionally let it fade.
Mm-hmm.
I could shift focus and redirect scale, and then see 3 Nordic Viking ships cresting up out of the water, moving to the left. I mean, the stories are endless. And what I love about that, let me just mention that this particular image, this is Santa Cruz Beach. This is where the pier at Santa Cruz used to be before the storms. And there was a ship out at the end of the pier, but the ship is all but gone now. Just so you know. All right, so go ahead, Jordan. Sorry, I'm just going to page through these pictures. When those pieces that somehow naturally compositionally resolve, the coastlines and burn patterns of the watercolor as they're drying, what's interesting with the pen around them, I mean, beyond the stories being endless, what I find is that compositional resolve that makes it into art. It's like looking into a tree, and I'll see, Mary Cassatt's face, or the outline of Einstein, or what have you, and it really becomes not just a representation of nature. I think our inner nature pours out to make nature on the paper or the canvas. And
take a look at this piece here. This was done by Colleen, and look at the refinement of the lace in this woman's kimono.
Yeah,
that she's got in her ceramics. It's really a cool image.
That is a cool image. It's also reminiscent of the traditional brass bells of the women in hoop skirts or kimonos.
Yeah. And this woman, and you see she has a ring, necklace of keys.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And this was a hawk that was visiting. So go ahead, Jordan. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I did.
No. I think I was at that pause point, but that the fact that the art created with those rocky pieces, it really brings to bear that instead of art being about aesthetics, there's this was nature created question where you can just continue to see things over and over.
Right, and this is the ceramic quilt that was made for Confluence 22, which is now hanging in her home. This is all of us getting together on the first night. Anyway, I'm going to stop the show and tell here, but
that's great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you get the idea of this. Of Colleen's home, which is going to be a part of the confluence. So on the last day, we're going to invite people back to Colleen's home for tea or something on the Sunday. It's going to start Thursday night, the 12th of October, and go through Sunday. And so we're very hopeful that this is going to be an incredible experience of eliciting the collective unconscious. So we don't know what we're going to get in our 30-foot long mural. And then we're going to take a picture of everybody with the mural, and then we're going to cut it up and give everybody a piece of it randomly, so that there'll be a synchronicity to the piece you get to take home.
Nice.
So it won't be the piece that you outlined, but the piece that you get to take home by synchronicity.
It's funny you say that, because Christmas this year, my mom, one of the gifts was this little bitty box with kind of a little tchotchke kind of thing. It's kind of a stocking stuffer, but it's always
Right.
fun stuff she puts together. But she put together all these quotes that she liked, and she just cut them into strips and mixed them up, and then randomly put them in all the boxes. And of course, Anais Nin has one of my favorite quotes, which was, there came a time when the pain to remain tied in the bud was, there came a time when the pain to remain tied in the bud, I think was eclipsed by the struggle to blossom, kind of thing. I'm
Right.
butchering the quote, but it was wild, because I opened up the box, and and I talked to her. I said, "Thanks so much for putting my favorite quote in the box." And she goes, "Which one?" And I read it, and she goes, "Oh, that was random. I didn't intend that to happen. It just did." So the synchronicity piece of that is
Yeah.
always fun.
So I'm going to put on the YouTube channel the website for Confluence 23, and it's not quite finished, but you can look at it. And Tim is going to finish it within a couple of weeks, so it'll have all the lodging costs and all that. But it's at a retreat center that includes meals in the price of the rooms, and you can get any level of room. So you can get a private single or double, or you can get a single where you share a bathroom down the hall, or you can actually camp on the site and use the showers and stuff if you want to. So you can adjust your cost of lodging by that, and then everybody eats together, and it's all vegetarian. This center is a very unique place in its own right, and it's mainly used as a yoga and meditation center, but Colleen has been involved with it for 50 years, so they really love her. And Judith asks, is it a Silomar? No, it's Mount Madonna Retreat Center in Watsonville, California. I'm going to put it on the YouTube chat. So it's just a gorgeous site. It's up on the mountain overlooking the bay. Let me see if I can. Okay, here's a panoramic of it all. I'll put that up on a share screen here in a moment. Okay, so this is actually a photograph of a photograph, but it's a panoramic of the retreat center. It's really a beautiful place. And you can see, basically, this is the Monterey Peninsula. This is Monterey Bay here, which you can see through the trees. And the room that we're going to be in is very gorgeous. It's this room here. So it's going to be very, very special. So just so everybody has a little taste of what it's going to be, and I'm glad you know of it, Judith, because it's a wonderful place, and I guess Colleen hadn't been up there. Colleen was able to reserve the space about 6 months ago, and but she hadn't been up there in maybe 3 or 4 years. But we get up there, and the woman at the gate says, "Oh, Colleen, you're here!" and then it was like old home week. There were like 10 people in the place that knew Colleen, and they invited us to stay for dinner as their guests, and so it's just a
Nice.
lovely place, and it is a sacred space, and it's going to be a very sacred event, although not specifically religiously involved. Where people will be able to meditate if they want to, and people will be able to do their own yoga as they wish there, but we're not proselytizing anything per se, except Carl Jung's notion of collective unconscious, and we're going to introduce people to the collective unconscious of this group as a way of understanding the collective unconscious. And the point is, as I said at the beginning of this discussion, Tim and I feel that we've been in confluence since I went to Helena for my portrait in May of 2021. We've already been in confluence, and it's never ending. And in a way, this group here, where we're doing this commentary and reading of the Red Book, is another form of it. We haven't conjoined them as yet, but in October we will, and people will start to understand that it's an experience that goes on, and it doesn't require any dogma or any specific rationality to it. It simply is, and it's a new form of culture, and it's a new form of being together in the world. And whether you ever learn anything artistic about it, it's not about somebody proselytizing their art. I doubt if we're going to have any exhibition up there of anybody's art other than the art that we produce as a group. And we will have some artists teaching us to do these things, but we're going to be doing them all together. So there will be an unconscious connection among the people that come. And it's going to be very, very powerful.
Well, I'd like to say too, what it just came to me, I can't believe I hadn't thought about this before, but so what? The whole concept of don't waste trouble, the first thing that comes to mind when you had prostate cancer was a portrait for the legacy of your children. And what's interesting about that is that's the big fire that causes the acorns to fall or what have you, and that they would not have germinated. Now, I think that's more redwood than oak tree, but combining the two things of in nature, sometimes it takes a big, massive tectonic shift for something to rebirth. And then in that portrait, then the acorn cracks open and little oak tree starts with portrait, which grows in, and then the confluence becomes that oak tree that grows from that whole. And that's, to me, a really wonderful, powerful example of what happens in the gold panning of don't waste trouble. The storm will always pass. So be the eye. And what was the message? So instead of, run, avoid, 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 by engaging that thought of the portrait that came, you took the gold nugget out of the chaos, and the alluvium goes back in the river. So I think that's an interesting, and actually very.
And by the way, this is in a redwood forest. So redwoods all around.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, it's that kind of thing to me actually occurred rather quickly. I mean, it's like psychological miracle grow in the mix.
All right, so Judith asks, is Rocky, I think that's the correct spelling, Judith, but I'm not sure, a known therapeutic format? And I would say that it has been further developed by Colleen, and so everything she does is Jungian, but I think it's a technique that she brought back from Japan. Okay, she has a very close connection with a special community in Japan called Omoto. And I don't know if she learned the Rocky technique at Omoto or whether it was something else that she learned there. But it obviously it has a certain Oriental look, at least in the red ribbon runs through it. It looks Chinese to me, and the mountains look like mountains in Guilin, China. But
it
but
does
anyway.
look Chinese because it has that roundness, whereas Korean would be a little more between a hard character and the soft character, and the Japanese would be more of the deep, angular kind of. So it does have that Chinese character in terms of the calligraphy.
Yeah. Okay. So for people that have just arrived, I'm going to show the Rocky again here just for a minute, so you know what we're talking about. It's this piece here, and we're not going to retalk it, but anyway, we're going to make a 30-foot long mural in one 24-hour period, and we're going to share it. So it's going to be, and everybody can be working on it throughout the confluence after we introduce it. So it'll be something that we're all working on as we go along. And so Colleen definitely sees it as a therapeutic thing, because she says she will prepare a paper. She uses very high quality deckled edge watercolor paper, and once she prepares it with the colors, then she just sits at the TV and does the outlining while she's watching TV, and something emerges from it, and it's really, really incredible.
It feels a bit like knitting, where you like knitting, where when you get into the motions, you can be doing something else, but the mind forgets, the body remembers, and the meditation occurs. Instead of sitting down to only meditate, you're actually doing a rather than even an active meditation, it's just a living meditation, which is I think so amazingly powerful. How you can forget as you just trace, just the shapes.
Right. And of course, we did an exercise like this in the advanced reading group with the portrait that initially emerged, because we were able to, after I received the portrait from Tim, I found 55 references to Jung in the portrait. and then as a group, we found another 55. So we found 110 references to Jung in a portrait, which Tim, didn't do any of that intentionally. He just painted a portrait,
Right.
But and he put a couple of features in the portrait that I wanted, but we were able as a group to come up with all these Jungian references. That was an exercise like Rocky in a sense, right? And because it was as a group, we were doing a collective exercise at that time. Okay, so let us go on with the Red Book. And so, happy Easter, everyone. He is risen, and happy Passover to our Jewish community. We accept all faiths here.
And risen not because of the yeast.
Yeah. Yeah. So Suzanne, you can go to the website, which I put the link on up there. I don't think it's ready to receive registrations yet, but I'm going to be mentioning it multiple times over the next few months because it's in October. And so you will be able to register within a couple of weeks. Tim is working on the website and it's not quite done, but you will be able to see a lot of things on the website soon. I don't think Tim has the prices for Mount Madonna and all that sort of stuff up there yet, but in a couple of weeks you'll have it. You'll be able to reserve a room at Mount Madonna and so on for the event. And we are going to limit it to 50 people. And so it's not going to be a mob scene. It's going to be 50 people that probably most of us will know one way or another. We will know them through this YouTube channel, but we'll also, there'll be friends of Colleen and Tim and lots of other people present. And so it'll be a closely knit group. It's not going to be a lot of the unwashed public who won't appreciate what's happening while we're there. So 50 people, get your reservation in early, and I'll tell you what, you can register now by sending an email to Tim Holmes. So I'm going to put Tim's email address here in the YouTube channel. And you can just write him and say you want to participate in Confluence 23. Or you can write to me. I won't share Tim's email address, but I'll share mine since I do anyway on this YouTube channel. So this is skip.conover@gmail.com. This is my main email address. You're free to write to me and say you want to participate in Confluence 23, and then I'll make sure that gets through and that Tim contacts you when the website is ready to accept reservations, and Tim will be aware of you. So I think that's probably the best way to get as many people as possible registered soon, okay, before the website's complete. But Tim has made great strides in that. You can look at confluence22.org and see what we did last year, and there are playlists on this YouTube channel, both Tim's playlist and my playlist, of various events that occurred. But I caution you that the main thing that happened at Confluence did not have to do with the specific events that we did during Confluence. It had to do with this bonding of the group which happened unconsciously. It didn't, we weren't planning on it, and it just did happen. And so, as I said, there were 12 of us last Wednesday night together, and we all feel quite bonded from that time. And we know that that's going to happen again now. So this year, it's going to be, with 2020 hindsight, we know what the mistakes we made in Helena, and we've resolved many of those in this, including doing it at a formal retreat center, which will take your reservations and so on. Last year, we were trying to find homestays for everybody that came, and it drove Tim absolutely up the wall. But anyway, I hope that you'll write to me and tell me that you're interested in coming, and I'll make sure that Tim starts a list of prospects that want to come, and we'll let you know when registration is possible. Okay, so we've wasted an hour, or not wasted, but we've spent an hour talking about
good stuff there.
Pardon?
Good stuff there that in the last hour. And it's interesting with resolution, returning to the Red Book Studies at Reader's Edition text, it starts with footnote 206, which is December 25th. So birthday rather than resurrection day.
Right.
8 months shy of 100 years ago, 1913. So, 2 2/3 seasons. I don't know what the numbers are going to do there, but it's interesting, though, that this resolution on Resurrection Day starts from a birthday in the same story. So I just thought that was an interesting synchronicity with beginning of 206 footnote, and that 206 is 2 + 6 is 8, and we're 8 months shy of 100 years there.
Yeah. I just want to look back at the footnote now that you're mentioning it.
Yeah, it's just a footnote of the date. It's just December 25th, 1913.
13, right.
6.
Right out. Okay, so I'm going to read.
You may just start reading since you've been talking and give your voice.
Yeah, but let's start, Jordan. The first sentence has 3 footnotes in it, and I'm going to go away for a bio break for a moment. And so why don't you read the 3 footnotes first? Okay.
206, 207, and 208.
No.
We're on resolution.
No, we're on page 198 at the beginning of the main idea 2, which begins with words "my longing." So it's 213, 14, and 15 are the footnotes.
Okay, I missed last week. The send out had both, so it begins
right.
with
We're not going to do that again. Okay, we did that last week.
Yeah,
okay, so we're starting on page 198 at the beginning of the last paragraph.
Begins my longing.
Yeah, it begins with my longing, but there are 3 footnotes in that first sentence.
214, 215, 216.
Well, no, 213, 14, and 15. And
okay, yeah, and 14 or
216 comes quickly also, but anyway, that's the way to start. I'll be right back.
Sounds good. So go ahead and reading footnote 213. The corrected draft has, in quotes, guiding reflection from page 127 in Black Book 2. Jung copied the following citation from Dante's Commedia in German translation. And I to him, I am one who, when love breathes on me, notices, and in the manner that he dictates within, I utter words. From Purgatorio 24, verse 24, 52 to 54. And then, in the same manner as a flame, which follows the fire which follows the fire, whatever shape it takes. The new form follows the spirit exactly, from Purgatorio 25, 97 to 99. And then the footnote 214, which will come up in here, his draft has the news of the desire revived by the mother, and we'll see which quote that goes with, which part of the verse it goes with once we begin reading. And then 215, the corrected draft has of the primordial image, and we'll be able to apply that one as we begin reading. So I'll go into part 2. My longing led me up to the overbright day, whose light is the opposite to the dark space of forethinking. The opposite principle is, as I think I understand it, heavenly love, the mother. The darkness that surrounds forethinking appears to be due to the fact that it is invisible in the interior and takes place in the depths. But the brightness of love seems to come from the fact that love is visible life in action. My pleasure was with forethinking and had its merry garden there, surrounded by darkness and light. I climbed down to my pleasure, but ascended to my love. I see Elijah high above me. This indicates that forethinking stands nearer to love than I, a man, do. Before I ascend to love, a condition must be fulfilled, which represents itself as the fight between two serpents. Left is day, right is night. The realm of love is light. The realm of overthinking, or the realm of forethinking, is dark. Both principles have separated themselves strictly and are even hostile to one another and have taken on the form of serpents. This form indicates the demonic nature of both principles. I recognize in this struggle a repetition of that vision where I saw the struggle between the sun and the black serpent. And that black serpent he originally had in the draft. Let me see. Descent into hell, descent into hell in the future.
Right.
So he's really, go ahead, your comments.
Yeah, well, he's talking about 216, the idea of the primordial image, and 217 was lives. I don't know where 217 was here. Okay, so invisible in the interior and takes place in the depths, but in the footnote it says has lives. Instead of in the depths. So it's our living. The point is in all Jungian psychology is the psyche is real, and it lives in the depths. It lives in the unconscious, and it's really unconscious. It's not subconscious. Subconscious would be something you just hadn't thought about. For example, if I say the word elephant, well, you weren't thinking of elephant before I said it, but now everybody's got an image of an elephant in their mind, and everybody has their own image of an elephant, or maybe many images of an elephant, but that's subconscious. We know what an elephant looks like, but the unconscious is really unconscious. And so we have to use various techniques to probe our unconscious and find out what we really think, right? Because it's our unconscious that rules our lives, actually.
Pretty much. It's interesting that he has the fight between two serpents, because serpents, like crabs, can easily move between two worlds, the above and the below.
Right.
Curious to me is he says left is day, right is night. And that would be an interior view. Whereas when I'm looking at an image, then the left is night or unconscious, and the right is day and conscious. But what's interesting is from an interior view with left as day, that means that which has already been brought to light, and the forethinking is dark on the right has not occurred yet. So it's unknown, therefore night. And so it's interesting from a visual reference I think when he says left is day, right is night, he's in that liminal space of the painting where he's looking out from an interior perspective, where then left is day and right is night. Whereas if I'm looking at an image, the left is night and the right would be day.
Right. Okay, so we're going to go on with the next paragraph, but I'm going to stop after the second sentence because there are two footnotes in the second sentence. At that time, the loving light was annihilated and blood began to pour out. This was the great war, but the spirit of the depths wants this struggle to be understood as a conflict in every man's own nature. And so the footnotes are the spirit for every man's own, the spirit of the depths. The footnote is the spirit. Okay. That's the deep unconscious psyche. And the second footnote, which is longer and more detailed, is therefore they all say that they're fighting for the good and for peace, but one cannot fight one another over the good. But since men don't know that, the conflict lies within themselves. The Germans thus believe that the English and the Russians are wrong, but the English and the Russians say that the Germans are wrong. But no one can judge history in terms of right and wrong, because one half of mankind is wrong. Every man is half wrong. Therefore, a conflict resides in his own soul, but man is blind and always knows only his half. The German has in him the English and the Russians, and the Russian whom he fights outside of himself. Likewise, the English and the Russian has in him the German whom he fights. But man appears to see the outer quarrel and not the one within, which alone is the wellspring of the great war. But before man can ascend to light and love, the great battle is needed. Okay, so this is a hugely important point in Jungian psychology, which is that what's happening on the outside is within all of us. So if we put in the context of today's current events, we have to accept that the part of our former president that we think of as wrong is actually our shadow side, and it's within all of us. And we have to accept all points of view in order to survive as a country. We have to accept that, even the people that we disagree with, whether they're liberal or conservative, are all part of us and all a part of United We Stand. And we've had this business of getting away from that in the last 6 years, let's say, of our politics, but that's going to change again, and we will stand united again. And it's never going to be perfect, of course. Okay, so I'm going to start again. I'll read those sentences again and go down to footnote 221.
Well, before
okay,
you
go ahead.
I think right there too, you highlighted the two things in conflict generally. To me, what's interesting is there's a magic to projection and transference when it comes out on the table, third person. The other person doesn't take it personally, they just hear it, kind of like two Finnish people at a table where in America you say, "How are you doing, Jordan?" Well, I'll start telling you. Well, in Finland, though, if you say, "How are you doing?" it's a friend who's noticing I have some inner workings going on. And so I just look over and go, "Thank you." And we both go silent while I have the space and time to think and let those things happen. So there's magic of transference and projection there. But when you don't interpret the conflict as your own inner civil war, AKA James Hillman's, incredible love of war, and you don't understand that it's not really enemies inside. They're just things that are in tension, that or at odds, that you bring to the fore. Then that projection puts the I'm angry, I'm in conflict out on someone else. And then you're able to blame them and then attack them because it's obviously their fault, when in reality, it's not at all. That it was self-induced. So
right on. Okay. So I'm going to read the beginning of this paragraph again and then keep going. At that time, the loving light was annihilated and blood began to pour out. This was the Great War. But the spirit of the depths wants this struggle to be understood as a conflict in every man's own soul. Since after the death of the hero, our urge to live could no longer imitate anything, it therefore went into the depths of every man and excited the terrible conflict between the powers of the depths. And the footnote reads, in December 1916, in his preface to The Psychology of the Unconscious Processes, Jung wrote, the psychological processes which accompany the present war, above all, the incredible brutalization of public opinion, the mutual slanderings and the unprecedented fury of destruction, the monstrous flood of lies and man's incapacity to call a halt to the bloody demon, are suited like nothing else to powerfully push in front of the eyes of thinking men the problem of the restlessly slumbering, chaotic, unconscious, under the ordered world of consciousness. This war has pitilessly revealed to civilized man that he is still a barbarian. But the psychology of the individual corresponds to the psychology of the nation, that the nation does what the nation does is done also by each individual. And so long as the individual does it, the nation also does it. Only the change in attitude of the individual is the beginning of the change of the psychology of the nation. And so what I'm saying here is, in terms of our current events, only when we change our attitudes will there be a change in this seemingly bifurcated country. We have to change our attitudes and accept all Americans, every race, color, and creed. Everybody has to be accepted. And
well, and I hate to be Pollyanna or generalized, but basically it's grow the heck up, where you're not trying to impress mom or dad with I'm right, or no, Mr. Johnson, I didn't throw the ball through your window. Lies, because you don't want to get in trouble. The thing is, then as an adult, validation is just for parking. And I think then when we don't take seriously any urge to blame, we stop learning to blame. We train ourselves how to treat ourselves. And then that trains other people how to treat themselves and how to treat you too. And then the blame game disappears into the, we don't have to agree to disagree. Disagreement's fine. Now I know your perspective. So now we have two things we can work with rather than just one. So consensus becomes overrated and war is then irrelevant. War is just a symbol of, excellent. We have some good tension to work with here. Let's play with it.
Right. Well, and as Americans, we just have got to accept this, because just as an example, yesterday I was on two flights, one from San Jose to St. Louis and one from St. Louis to BWI. And on the first flight, I had with me, in the two seats next to me, I had a Vietnamese American couple, where the man who's now, an adult, a mature adult, he came to the United States when he was 12 years old, and he had been born in what was North Vietnam. And his wife was a bit younger when she came, and she had come from South Vietnam. And the man works as a deputy sheriff in one of the counties of California. That's his job. And in the second leg, I had a man who was talking to me quite volubly, and his wife, he was a white man. Turns out he's an electrician, and his wife is Black, but not only is she Black, but she's from Ghana. And I mean, so she came from Ghana in her lifetime, again, like the other two. And they had been in a religious convention down in Texas, but religion didn't come up in our conversation. We just enjoyed our chat. And so, and those people I absolutely accept as full-blooded Americans, even though they weren't, 3 of the 4 that sat.
Yep, your video's frozen.
So you get on with being
There, your
Americans.
video had frozen for a second. It's interesting you mentioned that the couple with the electrician and then the woman from Ghana, because I heard someone at my table actually several weeks ago, a friend of mine stopped by and he said, I just heard this yesterday. You have to hear this. And he said, one of the biggest definitions of living synchronicity is when 2 strangers interact and their gods remain anonymous. And it was like when you said religion it was primary in their life, but it didn't come up. And I think that's a real synchronicity from 2 people livingly interacting, where there's a divinity that exists in just the communing, the community that occurs with just meeting someone.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so reading on now. Forethinking is singleness. Love is togetherness. Let's see, turning the page. But love is togetherness. Both need one another, and yet they kill one another. Since men do not know that the conflict occurs inside themselves, they go mad, and one lays the blame on the other. If one half of mankind is at fault, then every man is half at fault. But he does not see the conflict in his own soul, which is, however, the source of the outer disaster. If you are aggravated against your brother, think that you are aggravated against the brother in you, that is, against what in you is similar to your brother. Okay, I mean, these are pretty profound ideas here.
I like that you almost said aggregated instead of aggravated, because it actually fits so well with aggregate and concrete, where there's a mixture, and that mixture aggravates a lot of people, especially the parts that are other or unknown, but it's all inside. So I like, you kind of had I call it a Jungian slip, not a Freudian slip. So it actually applies.
Yeah, right. It is a Jungian
rather
slip.
than being a confession.
Yeah. Okay. So reading on, as a man, you are part of mankind, and therefore you have a share in the whole of mankind, as if you were the whole of mankind. If you overpower and kill your fellow man, who is contrary to you, then you also kill that person and yourself and have murdered a part of your life. The spirit of this dead man follows you and does not let your life become joyful. You need your wholeness to live out onward. You need your wholeness to live onward.
That brings up a wonderful point about the self-fueling of anger and warring, because in this murdering something in yourself, you are continually living with more and more unresolved grief that you have not grieved, and that it's not a self-loathing. He's even talking about a self, killing piece, the murdering piece of parts inside, except then that leaves dead necrosis, psychological toxin material inside, which then that irritates and makes them, going mad, as in a sense of sickness then.
Right,
which it already was, but.
All right, reading on. If I myself endorse the pure principle, I step to one side and become one-sided. Therefore, my forethinking in the principle of the Heavenly Mother becomes an ugly dwarf who lives in a dark cave like an unborn in the womb. Now, there's a footnote. The footnote says, it says, instead of my forethinking in the principle, it says the prophet, the personification of the idea. So Elijah has appeared in his active imagination, and he's a personification of the idea in Jung's imaginative life. So therefore, my forethinking in the principle of the Heavenly Mother becomes an ugly dwarf who lives in a dark cave like an unborn in the womb. You do not follow him, even if he says to you that you could drink wisdom from his source. But forethinking, and there's a footnote here, it has the idea. Okay, so the idea appears to you there as dwarfish cleverness, false and of the night, just as the Heavenly Mother appears to me down there as the Salome. That which is lacking in the pure principle appears as the serpent. The hero strives after the utmost. The hero strives after the utmost in the pure principle, and therefore he finally falls for the serpent. If you go to thinking, take your heart with you. If you go to love, take your head with you. Love is empty without thinking. Thinking is hollow without love. The serpent lurks behind the pure principle. Therefore, I lost courage until I found the serpent that at once led me across to the other side, other principle. In climbing down, I become smaller. Okay, anything there?
Yeah, just simply back to the importance here of when he finds the serpent. The serpent is the one, like the crab, who easily moves naturally between two worlds, basically home and vacation home as it would be, but they're both home and part, but in a sense, two differences under the same roof, or under the same self. So he lost the courage until he found the serpent that at once led him across. So in a sense, has the handmaiden of time, as it were, to lead him across every passage into the other world. And then in climbing down, it becomes smaller. He's shifting focus to change scale, because now he's going to integrate and inhabit that place at a size where in the Atman, smaller than small and larger than large, he's going to the other, to the smaller.
Right. Okay. You want to start with,
Great is, yeah.
yeah. And we'll just go to the end of this page and then leave the last 4 pages of this chapter for next week.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Great is he who is in love, since love is the present act of the great creator, the present moment of the becoming and lapsing of the world. Mighty is he
Jordan,
who
would you
loves.
read it again, because there was an attenuation there? So begin at the beginning.
Certainly. Great is he who is in love, since love is the present act of the great creator, the present moment of the becoming and lapsing of the world. Mighty is he who loves, but whoever distances himself from love feels himself powerful. In your forethinking, you recognize the nullity of your current being as a smallest point between the infinity of what has passed and of what is to come. The thinker is small. He feels great if he distances himself from thinking. But if we speak about appearances, it is the other way around. To whoever is in love, form is a trifling, but his field of vision ends with the form given to him. To whoever is in thinking, form is insurpassable and the height of heaven. But at night, he sees the diversity of the innumerable worlds and their never-ending cycles. Whoever is in love is a full and overflowing vessel and awaits the giving. Whoever is in forethinking is deep and hollow and awaits fulfillment. Love and forethinking are in one and the same place. Love cannot be without forethinking, and forethinking cannot be without love. Man is always too much in one or the other. This comes with human nature. Animals and plants seem to have enough in every way. Only man staggers between too much and too little. He wavers. He is uncertain how much he must give here and how much there. His knowledge and ability is insufficient, and yet he must still do it himself. Man doesn't only grow from within himself, for he is also creative from within himself. The God becomes revealed in him. Human nature is little skilled in divinity, and therefore man fluctuates between too much and too little. So footnotes 225 through 227. Let's see here. The corrected draft, footnote 225, adds conscious and deletes from within himself. So it's in boiling down that inner thinking to just being conscious. To footnote 226, the draft and corrective draft have instead the divine creative power becomes in him a personal consciousness from the unconscious collective. And then 227 for the draft and corrected draft, they have, but why, you ask, does forethinking, the idea, appear to you in the guise of a Jewish prophet and the pleasure, in the guise of the heathen Salome? My friend, do not forget that I too am one who thinks and wants in the spirit of this time, and is completely under the spell of the serpent. I am just now, through my initiation into the mysteries of the spirit, struck out of the depths, about to not entirely discard all the ancientness lacked by those thinking in the spirit of this time, but to readopt it into my being human, to make my life whole. For I have become poor and far removed from God. I must take in the divine and the mundane, since the spirit of this time had nothing else to give me. On the contrary, he took the little that I possessed of real life. But in particular, he made me hasty and greedy, since he is merely the present, and he forced me to hunt down everything present to fill the moment.
Right. And so I wanted to go back to the first full paragraph on page 201. Great is he who is in love, since love is the present act of the great creator, the present moment of the becoming and lapsing of the world. Mighty is he who loves, but whoever distances himself from love feels himself powerful. So this is a wonderful metaphor, or our confluence is a metaphor for this, because if you're coming to the confluence with power, you're not going to get what you need. And so you have to come with love, and that's not a imprimatur. I'm not requiring you to come with love, but in order to participate in what we're doing, you have to let yourself go and participate fully in what we are doing. So for 3 days, you're going to be in kind of an unconscious space, and we're going to read out what comes from the collective unconscious in the form of the works of art that we create up there. But it's not a question of making committees or any other such thing. It's a question of, we're simply going to do these things, and we're going to experience what the collective unconscious is. And with luck, we're going to also get a read. I can't predict whether it's going to be a big or a small read, but we are going to get a read on the direction of the culture of our country, of the United States, and also the culture of the group, which may include people from outside the United States. But the point is that the works of art that we create, excuse me, the works of art that we create together can't be created by power. They can only be created by love. But so they can't be created by forethinking. In other words, you're not going to be able to say, oh, I'm going to put thus and so into this group work and make my point. Well, no, you're not, because what you're putting into it is first an act of love, even if it's something that many of us would find hateful, like images of weapons or something like that. And we will have to accept that those images are within us and within our culture, but it doesn't give you power to include such images if you do it. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying it's part of the process, but there's going to be a collective result. And so, hello, Annette. And,
Hey there.
Erin Gobra, how are you from Ireland? Nice to see you. She's not. She's keeping herself. Okay, so she says hi, Skip. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this discussion. Oh, you're in Spain. I see. Okay. Well, buenos dias. Buenas tardes. It must be by
Nice.
now. And
well, I'm glad you brought that up as kind of a end note here for today, because the love of power versus the power of love. Love of power is singular and insular and king or queen of the mountain, top of the mountain stuff, whereas the power of love certainly has power in it, but it's not insulated, it's connected. And I think it's connected within and connected outside or without or about oneself. So I think the difference, there is not a love of power. There simply is natural, healthy power in love. But the love of power itself is isolated, insulated,
Right.
and love, the power of love is connected and congregated, as it were.
Right. And so, what we're saying is that you're going to give up your love of power when you come up to Mount Madonna. You're going to become a creator, and we're going to create a series of collective works together, and that is going to give us a picture of the collective unconscious. So, Judith, I know you were watching on YouTube. Do you have any comments? I'd love to hear them. You have to unmute. Judith, you have to.
Well, I love working and creating a nonlinear, non-rational container for the unconscious to speak. And I use one form called soul collage with my clients a lot, because it accesses, just like the creativity that he's talking about, even though he's saying he changed creativity to consciousness, right, in the note.
Yeah, and by the way, collage is one of the artistic forms that Colleen has been working with for 50 years, and so the confluence is going to begin with a personal collage. That's the first thing that we're going to be doing, is a personal collage. And then we'll be going from there and going from the personal collage, which might be what you're calling the soul collage, into we'll be going into
more collective, right?
These collective works.
Yeah, wonderful. It sounds so good. And reading these few pages with you, it is so helpful to do it in presence with others. And
yes.
So thank you, Skip and Jordan and all the others who are listening to and hear, that it just enriches that quality.
I couldn't agree more. And I appreciate you being here. I mean, just for that reason, because I think even when you get it beyond it intellectually, when you're reading alone, there is, that internal soul community collage of me, myself, but it's not dropping into a love of power, but it is insulated in a way. And so I think when we come together here, then it's that connection piece, and it extends, and we see different perspective. And I think like a garden, it grows.
Yeah.
But not like, Mary's garden. I mean,
and as I've said, we who are organizers of this have been in this confluence since May of 21, and it never has ended. It never stopped. And so what we are doing in each of our annual events now is drawing more and more people into it, with the hope that they will then take it back into their community and do something like it in their community as a way of experiencing culture as it is, rather than as some politician wants it to be, through power. Okay. Because we've seen a lot of the power devil the last 6 years on both sides. And and so now we're gonna give ourselves up to this process and see what emerges. It's going to be quite powerful. I'm sure of it. And the reason I'm so sure of it is because we've been doing it for 2 years, or for 23 months, I guess. And
Yeah, I love that line too. Whoever is in love is a full and overflowing vessel and awaits the giving. Whoever is in forethinking is deep and hollow and awaits fulfillment. But that you need both of these, and how as humans, our species, we seem to be unlike the plants and the more ever flowing, aware beings, other beings on the planet. We seem to have quite a lot of imbalance.
Huge imbalance.
I like that you brought that line up, because the distinction of those in love await the giving. So there's I am
right?
able to receive, whereas those in power, await the fulfilling, meaning gimme, gimme, gimme. It's not a two-way street. It's I expect you to deplete yourself,
Right.
And I think that that's interesting, because the implication there is awaiting the giving, meaning you're not going to ask. In that sense, it's a gift of a natural interchange. Right. But when it occurs, then I am here to receive. So it's not going to shut you out. Whereas the second one, awaiting fulfillment, it's all completely shut out. But it's like, please, make your deposit in the ATM, but we're not going to open the bank, so to speak.
Right. Well, so it, basically when you come up there, you're inevitably going to be plunged into your unconscious, whether you know it or not, because, there's one secret about the location. I'm not sure I want to say now what that location is. It's called Mount Madonna, but for most people, it will be a type of place that you will not have visited before. And and that alone will cause you to go into your unconscious. Okay. Right there. Everybody will have to deal with that.
And that brings up, Judith, the lines you pulled out, because the space, it's so much conducive to the unconscious and sharing, because the space is there waiting for the giving from each of us. Yeah, so it gives us a place to pour.
And it's a very new, the space is the space is very neutral, but
like a vessel.
It is a vessel, yeah. And Susan Mason, artist, our friend Susan Mason, says, Judith, I am a soul collage facilitator. And so we are all we're all going to learn how to do this, but there's some surprising detail that will come up. And Richard says that it's like finger painting, mental finger painting, and yes, in a sense it is, because we're going to be doing something that sort of does take us back to childhood in a way, but it in an adult and mature manner. So as you see, the Rocky comes out and it's quite sophisticated, and it's not like a kindergartner will do, but very honestly, I spent my last month as an art teacher. I'm a substitute teacher, and so I teach to second to fifth graders this period. I'm a substitute teacher, but for the next 2 months, I'm going to be an art teacher, continue to be an art teacher. And so one of the things I am going to do with my elementary school kids is I'm going to do Rockies with them. I'm going to spend 4 weeks doing that. And
I'm glad you brought up Richard brought up the finger painting, because children are inherently connected. And so when the adult is childlike, that's healthy, because you're connected. it's when the childish, the tantruming, the blaming occurs. That's the problem. So that it's interesting because several weeks ago on the plaza, there was, just those times when you hear a child start speaking from maybe 20 feet away, but somehow everything stops and to look. And I looked over, and it was a dad who had just had it for the day. You could tell he was tired, and his daughter was still just full of energy, moving around, wanting to go to this shop and that. And she looks up and tugs on his arm. She goes, "Dad, what's wrong?" He goes, "Oh, it's just the wind. It's so staticky." And she goes, "You look tired. And why are you mad at the wind?" He goes, "Oh, it's just blowing here and blowing there." And she goes, "It's okay, Dad. Nature just has to breathe a little harder to birth spring." And what a metaphor, she had to be 6, 5, 7, she was young, but there was that connection, and she went straight into a bigger picture that then he all of a sudden, energized back up. So it's as if she filled his gas tank there. So I think this Richard's comment of, it's like finger painting when you're a kid. I think that connection, that tactile, that touch to the colors and the pigments that you're literally creating, regardless of any intent, will facilitate that reconnection. So then you can start to learn to swim again.
So I should have brought this over before, but I had to go get it. It was in my luggage. But this is the book that Colleen created on collage, the personal collage map, and by Colleen Kibert. And it says on the back here, it says Colleen Kibert, Master of Science, has explored the collage making process for 7 decades. A sculptor and psychologist, her major fields of study have been ceramics and the psychology of the creative personality and the creative process. She also teaches advanced ceramic sculpture and exhibits her own work internationally. But the most interesting thing is when you're creating a collage, you end up with, wait a minute, I have to get my cloaking out of the way here. Sorry. Okay. She created this personal collage map, and can you see that, Judith? I can't hear you.
Yes, it's lovely.
Yes, that's wonderful, Skip.
Okay, so we're going to do the personal collage, and then you see the
Yes.
the things that go around in the circle that Colleen has developed over 7 decades. And she calls this the Colleen Kibert method. And so she has lots of meanings. She has various meanings of things here. It's a lovely pamphlet, but
is it available, Skip, or not?
Well, it's available. It's not published on YouTube, but I think she's going to give everybody who comes to the Confluence a copy.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay, and if you send me an email and ask nicely, I could probably send you this much of it anyway.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. I feel so blessed to find you all and to hear of the influence. I feel like a part of me is already making a pathway to come.
Yeah,
Nice.
and so anyway, and here is a description of progressing the personal collage with active imagination. And she says, to apply active imagination to a personal collage, she says, first, select an image from the collage that seems to have special intrigue or potential for personal growth. This means removing the image from the first collage and progressing the image forward by placing it separately on what becomes a workbook. Relate with the image by giving it a title. And so this is the image that she selected for her discussion, which is a Venus of Monterey Bay. It's a 9-inch ceramic from 2022 that she did. And of course, anybody that knows Colleen knows that quite a lot of her ceramic works have been based on Venus of Willendorf, which is one of the first sculptures that we know of in humanity. You know, the first Venus of Willendorf was done 40,000 years ago. And so, anyway, I just,
Yes, it's so fascinating, the Venus figure. And it also reminds me very much of we were just in Torrevieja now and in the Easter parade.
mhm,
And they had just as much statues of Mary as of Jesus on the cross. You know, it was the Stations of the Cross,
I'm sure
which is
that's true.
in Spain, that's carried through the streets, and there's loads of musicians behind it and so on.
Mhm.
And but I was struck by that there were the statue of Mary and of a female goddess was equal to the others, and that is amazing to me.
Right, and
Yeah.
of course, Jung thought that the emergence of the feminine and the recognition of the feminine, with Mary being advanced to heaven by Pope Pius XII in 1950, the Assumption of the Virgin Mary into heaven was a major move. Well, first of all, he said it was the most important religious event since the Reformation, number one. And pardon?
Yes, indeed. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and this is in paragraph 752 of Answer to Job, just so everybody knows where to look for that.
And maybe soon enough, the Trinity cameo of Father, Son, and Holy Ghost will not just have pictures of two dudes and then a blank ghost. I mean, they'll actually put Sophia or Mary there.
Yeah. But,
so that the female has
you know,
a
the
face.
church resisted for 1,000 years. Of course, the people were already praying to Mary and praying the rosary for 1,000 years before the church caught on to realize that, this is an important thing here that's happening. There go my people, I must follow them,
Well, and what's interesting about that too is, though, there's kind of a power of love of we're losing market share, or love of power that they're losing market share, where then the people are influencing them back to get them back on track, as it were.
Right. And
yes, because that reminded me very much of this love of power and the other way, the love for the love. And in the end, I think that is what the huge struggle is about, isn't it? Inside the churches nowadays. I just wonder. Yeah.
And
very much.
There's I often think of images because I've seen 3,000 movies, I estimate, in my time, but some of them have been most affecting to me. I'm a man and I'm a retired military officer, so I tend to be interested in war movies, but the scene that comes to mind is a scene from A Bridge Too Far. You may or may not have seen it, but it was a movie about Operation Market Garden during World War II, where the British parachuted into Holland as part of
Yes, I know it well.
right.
Yes.
And near the end of the movie, there's a scene at this woman's villa, which has been commandeered as a hospital, and the men who have been triaged out, so they're not in the hospital and who are dying, are in the yard of the hospital, and there's lots of groaning and dying going on in that scene, but one of first there's a man saying, Morpheus, give me Morpheus. He wanted morphine to ease his pain, but and I don't know if people know, but we do have euthanasia in this country, and in both cases, when my parents died, I was required to agree with the doctor that he could increase the dosage of morphine that my parents were receiving, which expedited their deaths. And it's not, I don't consider myself the murderer of my parents, even though I gave that approval, because their death was inevitable and it was coming within hours in both cases, but I agreed to the easing of their pain. But the other thing that was going on in that scene was that one of the men was reciting the rosary. And I, as we talk about this, and as you mentioned, all the images of the Virgin Mary today in the Easter parade, this is why the Pope had to ultimately issue the papal bull of 1950 that's the Assumption of the Virgin Mary into heaven. And so, I urge everyone, if you haven't done it recently, go back to Answer to Job and read paragraph 751 to 758, which is the end. Those 10 or so paragraphs are extremely important in Jungian psychology. I just can't tell you how important they are. They're just beyond important. They're and so one of the things that Jung says in there was that papal bull was the most important thing that happened in religion since the Reformation. So
yes, and because I also saw, and which also was amazing, was that somebody was walking around with a big board saying, the way through Jesus is, the only way through Jesus is through the mother, which means that they acknowledging these earlier traditions that were there before Christianity.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and Skip, your easing of your parents' pain there. I mean, from personal experience, when I had my ACL replacement, my knee surgery, I'm sitting there with a 4.5, 5-inch gash in my knee because they harvested the middle third of the patella tendon so it wouldn't reject, and it regenerates. But they didn't realize that the cooler that was cooling my knee was manual and ice. They thought it was electric when they switched shifts. So I'm sitting there, dying in pain. But what happened is the morphine hits, and I'm aware of the pain. but it is now simply a sensation. It is no longer an interference pattern. It's pain, but it doesn't hurt. And I'm very conscious, calm, and aware. So it seems, because, morphine only makes you loopy if you don't have the pain and you're used as a drug. But as a palliative, I could, it doesn't matter if I do or don't, but I'm in full support of your nod to that, because I don't know their experience, but they may have been more calm and conscious to be able to experience their passage from life. And, that to me is actually very compassionate and giving to them of potentially a last life experience rather than some screaming terror, going down in flames, so to speak.
Absolutely. It's very humane, I would imagine. Yeah.
Well, and Kimberly on YouTube says she just went through the same thing with her parents. She questioned the morphine. And obviously it's a matter of dosage. But in any case, so Colleen, I'll read something that Colleen wrote at the end of this book, which is Concern. It's the title of it is Concern. And she said, "You may ask how knowing about this map can affect the way you construct a collage. I can assure you, repeat collage makers tell me that the creative drive takes over and they forget about the map. This is usually my personal experience as well. However, there are times when I place an image with map awareness in the center of my collage, knowing this is how I feel, but I probably don't know why yet, and I may change its position later. If we are aware of this map while constructing a collage, it doesn't seem to get in the way of the excitement and energy coming forth from the creative drive. In the end, reflection and feedback from others deepens my personal understanding." And then her conclusion here: "A personal collage is an invitation to engage with the creative energy that rests in our unconscious. Much collage making results in creating a pretty picture. To utilize the map presented here is to take seriously the psychology in us that is longing to be understood." Dr. Jack Goncalo, professor of business, University of Illinois at Urbana, and author of Inspired Understanding Creativity, has found that because creativity means engaging with the unknown, intensifying feelings of uncertainty hamper our abilities to develop sorely needed innovation. Though we say we believe creativity is positive and vital, in actuality, we are ambivalent. Our art reflects our evolution. We can see what we are both conscious and we can see that we are both conscious and unconscious beings. But until now, we have mostly developed our conscious psyche, relying on external stimulation for inspiration and ignoring the intelligence and emotional wisdom that rests in our unconscious. The time has come to engage with our unconscious, knowing that we are in process of developing the potential for our evolution as human beings. The collage map is a dynamic tool for this purpose, or for this pursuit. And she provides her references.
I really like the preview that you read from her too, because I know from the 4-quadrant piece we did in Participación Mystique all together with her, the map awareness came and went. It would basically segue collage in and out, fade in and out. And sometimes I would avoid putting something somewhere because, I know that doesn't go there. I want it to, but it shouldn't. It feels to go here. And then the map disappeared as I said, feels to go. So it's nice because it kind of like staying on the road except you're on autopilot.
Right. So, so Judith and Annette, so you feel that we are on the right track in terms of our planning, I gather.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. I'm just feeling the warmth and like the good fortune that I had no idea this is what you were co-creating or had done in 22. And it's a kind of, it fills a kind of longing for me to even hear that this is happening. And so, because I do feel it's how we're going to become more our whole human beingness, our truly more individuated. It's not going to come from the frontal lobes alone or the neocortex or, just even sitting on our own cushion.
That's right.
In solitude. Although those are wonderful benefits. Yeah.
Well, I love that you brought up the frontal lobe, because even the uraeus, the cobra coming out of the pharaonic hat, that's the pineal gland coming out of the frontal lobe. Is basically, I know, my consciousness, and then the pineal is the formlessness of the unconscious and intuition. But when they work together that way, you're right. Rather than even that whole thing, that's just a representation, but the experiential of, okay, now how do those operate in real time, in real life?
Yeah.
Right. And
so I look forward to more, Skip. I am going to have to leave in a few minutes.
Yeah, well, we all have to leave because it's Easter and my mother-in-law is here and she's watching her church service right now, but we all have to go. So,
and like Annette, it becomes a tangible experience.
Right. Yeah. So peace, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy Easter, happy Passover.
Thank you.
We will see you next week as usual.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for joining us, Judith. We're delighted to have you. So take care. Peace.